Good afternoon. My name is Agnieszka Jańczuk. I'm assistant professor in European Economic Law at Carriero University, where I teach supervision of markets, financial regulation, and European law. As regards my area of research, among others, is of course payments, which is why I'm here.
Due to the increasing of data sharing and considering the possible risk of data breach, how should the authority face this event, in your opinion, of course?
Thank you for this question. So indeed, data sharing and potentially related data breaches are an increasing problem. The approach that is included in GDPR is privacy by design, and it's actually very important to, when thinking about privacy by design, also to think about the design that prevents as much as possible against data breaches. 100% protection is never possible, so ultimately what is important is that companies behave in a diligent manner, so they do as much as possible. Important here is for sure the differentiation between different companies and their capacity, but also the potential harm to consumers due to data breaches. So for sure, companies which gather little data and maybe not very relevant, not very sensitive data, they can be subject to lower level of obligations and maybe subject to lower security systems, so the obligation to have a lower level of security systems to prevent against data breaches, while companies with higher capacity and higher potential to cause harm due to data breaches because they collect first larger amount of data or second more sensitive data, they should be subject to more demanding requirements. So I think if we talk about the approach that regulatory authorities should take, they should take a so-called risk-based approach, so target those companies who potentially can cause higher harm, larger harm to consumers due to the data breaches, and focus on them to require them to behave in a diligent manner, in a sense of introducing a proper security system, introducing proper procedures, bearing in mind that 100% protection is never going to be possible.
Okay, and also, if we consider maybe consumer feedbacks, could be useful, about what you've talked right now, maybe industries or companies should involve more consumer feedback in order to get better data and maybe make more safer all this process of authentication, so all the process regarding the consumer aspect. In your opinion?
I'm not convinced actually, because the level of technicality, the level of technical knowledge and tools needed to actually properly secure data against breaches, I think is beyond. I mean, consumer feedback is always useful. I am not entirely convinced that here it is the most valuable source to use when designing the security system.
Because maybe it can create bias in making the process of everything. Do you think something about that?
I don't think it's about bias. I just think that the level of technicality involved, you really need to create highly sophisticated systems to protect data that you collect against breaches. I am not sure consumers are even aware of the way companies actually do it, because your consumer experience does not relate to, you never get in touch with the way in which data is actually protected and secured by the company that collects it.
considering the process of the various third-party providers to chase data for providing services, how do you consider the practice of screen scraping? Is it safe or not? If not, how would you regulate all this process?
Yes, so data scraping is a very controversial technique. Of course, it is used by first-party providers to get access to data due to the fact that so far more legitimate channels were not very accessible to them. Of course, scrapping is dangerous. I think there is little doubt about this. Consumers are not aware, first of all, when they give consent to use certain services, that actually those services gain access to their data and to data to the scope of data that they also have no idea about, and they have therefore no control over who accesses their data, the scope, which is accessed, and then how it is used. Yes, because it's all happening without their consent and actually without legitimate reason. Of course, prohibiting data scrapping until more legitimate channels of access to data held by account services providers would mean that many third-party providers would be simply driven out of the market. But we are now in an environment where actually more legitimate and more secure channels of accessing data are being developed or have already been developed. So at some point, screen scrapping should be simply prohibited.